1, go.
Welcome, everybody, to the official blog of Robert Bruce. I'm sitting here with the man himself. Hello, Robert.
G'day, Timothy.
I am the media manager for Robert, and I just want to take a minute to welcome you to our brand new portal where you're going to be privy to all new releases of videos, tips, clips, all kinds of interesting interviews we're going to be doing over the next couple of months. This is going to be your new source for all the newest things happening with Robert Bruce. You're definitely going to want to listen to this whole 15-minute introduction because we're going to kind of walk through Robert's very, very colorful history. And we're also going to cover some of the plans that Robert and I have for new video courses and programs on various psychic topics that are going to be right up your alley. So, Robert, why don't we start right at the beginning? Tell us about what happened when you were 4 years old. Is it correct that you had an extraterrestrial visit you in your bedroom?
I did. This happened hundreds of times in my early years, in my up until my early teens. And the first time I noticed this, I was about probably just before I was 4 years of age. And I would wake up paralyzed in my body and not being able to move with this horrible fizzing vibration going through me. And once, only once, I turned around in my own skin, I now know, and I looked beside me and I saw a large ET. Looked like a large praying mantis with a big triangular head and big eyes. And it had this big ball of light, and it was doing something to it which was causing these weird vibrations in me. And I now know, looking back on it, this ET altered me in some way. It changed me. Because after that experience, I started floating out of my body and having out-of-body experiences every night. And as I grew up, I learned I could just think of it. When I was going to bed, I would just think about coming out of my body, and I would.
So this sort of praying mantis extraterrestrial used some sort of neurosynchronization technology that sort of made it easier for you to astral project. Is that correct?
Yes. It was something, it felt like hemisync, which is the Monroe Institute produced binaural beat sounds which induce altered states of consciousness, which I experienced several years ago. And as soon as I put the headphones on and felt the effect those sounds had on my body, I recognized it straight away as being similar, not exactly the same, but similar to the vibrations my body was feeling from this light ball this ET was doing to me.
Interesting. Now, from what you've told me, this is not the only time you've ever been visited in your bedroom when you were alone. Tell us about, so when you were 4 that happened, and then as you grew up, when you were around 13, you were homesick from school, and angels visited you, is that correct?
Yes, it did. It was an amazing thing. I'd been homesick with the flu at the time, and I was completely over that. But I was, telling Mum, "Oh, I'm still sick. Need a few days off." And I was having my lunch in my room. I was alone in the house and sitting up in bed reading Moby Dick. And I was a voracious reader. I'm sitting there with my cheese sandwich and my orange juice, and 3 angels walked through the wall of my bedroom.
The room was 3 angels.
Yeah.
Angels.
Angels. Yeah. They walked from my bedroom wall, and my room was dimly lit. It was an interior room of the house, and I had a reading lamp. And they moved to the end of the room, and one angel was a fair bit taller than the other ones, about half a head taller. And one of these smaller angels, they were full human size, was carrying this gigantic book about a foot thick and a couple of feet across. Biggest book I've ever seen. And they formed at the end of the room, and the lead angel took a step upwards, floated in the air up near the ceiling, and the other 2 angels formed up on either side, and the angel with the book handed it up to the lead angel, who took the book and opened it and looked at me and smiled. And I'm sitting there slapping my face and pinching myself, orange juice all down me, and the lead angel started looking through this book. And it got to a page, and it started running its finger up and down through the pages. And then it found something. I don't know what it found, maybe my name. And it found it, put its finger there, and looked up at me and smiled. And then it
Huh.
closed the book, and the angel was formed up again and walked out through the wall again. And I'm left sitting there covered in orange juice going, what? What?
Wow.
I didn't know, but it was a very symbolic experience, and I've understood a lot more about this over the years.
So you have had the sort of stereotypical visitations in the bedroom experiences with both the extraterrestrials and the angels, which is very fascinating to say the least. Now let's continue moving on down the timeline of your life. Uh, so you began to, so the extraterrestrials basically schooled you to astral project, and as you entered into your 20s, um, well, you tell us what happened when you were 27 with your son, and how did that impact your future spiritual progress?
When I was 27, 27, 28, my eldest son at the time, Jeremy, was almost 8 years old, and he was killed. We were at a Christmas party, and he was caught in a sandslide and buried alive. I pulled him out a few minutes later, and it was just a little bit too late. I couldn't resuscitate him, couldn't quite bring him back, and that was, of course, a major impact on my life. It was absolutely devastating, is for any parent. But that also gave me a huge motivation to continue doing what I was doing, to push harder, to develop the abilities and clairvoyance to penetrate the spirit worlds, the heavens. And the day he died, after he died, my son came back to me in my room and appeared there in this blinding light, and he apologized for dying. I thought that was so sweet. Of course, I was devastated, and he told me he was okay and being, was fine. And obviously, he's still alive, not physically, uh, but I had a lot of experiences like that with him around the time of his death and his funeral.
Well, let me make
Yeah.
sure I'm getting this straight because this is an extremely personal thing that you're sharing with everybody right now. So your son passed away in sort of what can only be called a tragic accident. And later on, he actually came back and visited you, apologizing for dying. And what you just said is that this inspired you to kind of seek him out in the spirit world. Did you find him?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Several years later, I continued my practice, deep altered state work, astral projection, and developing myself energetically. And eventually, I cracked it. I penetrated, astral projected into the spirit worlds, and there he was waiting for me with open arms. And there were people already. He was jumping up and down, saying, clapping. He said, "Daddy, Daddy!" It's like I told him you could do it, and I picked him up, and it was hugely emotional. But I had to keep very tight control of my emotions to maintain the experience and the focus I needed. And I was in like this amphitheater, huge, like a big football field, with like an alabaster stone floor with a rise at the back of it. And at the back there was a dozen or so angels with trumpets standing there, and there were other angels around the side, and this brilliant light coming from the back, like like the sun, only much brighter than the sun. And there was like probably 100 people there. Some of them I knew, their relatives and friends that had passed away, and some of them I didn't know. And I managed to stay there for probably 30 or 40 seconds before it all started to fade. The emotion caught up with me, and I could feel myself choking up. And then it shifted, and I was back in my body again. Uh, and yeah, and that was the first of many infrequent visits over the years to the spirit worlds. There's something which I now, in my later years, I do quite regularly. Uh,
That's fascinating. Well, your interesting stories. I mean, they continue throughout your life. If there's one person that I know that has had seriously some of the most profoundly impactful things happen to you easily. So as you continued on from that kind of landmark phase of your life into your 30s, tell us what happened with Kundalini. How did you get into it? Did you in fact raise Kundalini? Um, what happened?
Well, I did in my early 30s, about the age of 33. I decided to raise Kundalini. Now, I'd read about 2 or 3 pages in an old spiritualist book from the 40s about just describing the phenomena in a very basic form. And at the time, I was helping a family that had some really bad entity problems, demonic attack type problems. And in particular, they had a little girl of 5 years of age that was had possession problems, big change in the personality, a lot of phenomena around her. And I tried everything to help this little girl, and nothing was working. And I figured, I guessed, I was hoping that by raising Kundalini, I would gain the power that I needed to help her and this family. So I set myself to do it and raised it, my Kundalini, which was a massive thing. And I raised it several times. Um, and then several months later, when I tackled this entity with this a little girl, I tried everything again. And at one point there, I was totally exasperated with trying to help this little girl. I could see clairvoyantly this entity, which was a demon, walking around. It looked a bit like Gollum out of Lord of the Rings, but with little horns, and walking around the edges. And at one point, I don't know what possessed me, literally, to say it. I said, "Take me and leave the child," and it did instantly. I gave it full permission. I didn't realise that it was real, that that could actually happen. I suppose I was doing something honourable that may, I was just going through the motions of trying everything I could do to help. But it actually did instantly possess me with my permission. And then began a very difficult time in my life, which is both terrifying in some aspects and heart lifting in others, because over a period of about 2 months, I battled this thing which was progressively taking control of my body and my mind. And I was led firmly into the greater reality and connecting with my higher self as a matter of survival. And my higher self led me to a place in the wilderness in Australia where I was led to a very special place where I released myself from the spirit and healed myself of it. But that experience, which is in a nutshell here, totally changed me, and it put me in the greater spiritual reality very, very firmly, and I'm still there. So it was a big transformative experience, spiritual awakening in every sense of the word.
It's very powerful. Um, I can imagine how that kind of thing can really toughen you up and even send you deeper into kind of the greater reality and the spirituality. Now, at some point later, as you got older, you had some relationship things happen in your life, and by chance, you found yourself for an extended period living with your mother in your 40s. Now, from what I remember, she was a professional author. She wrote children's fiction. Now, you learned to write by observing her, is that correct?
That's correct. I moved in with my mother about the age of 40, 39 probably. And my mother was working full time as a writer, albeit she never got published. She never submitted a manuscript, but she loved to write, and she wrote several books on children's fiction. But living there over the years with her, she would get up in the morning and start work, have a cup of coffee, and eventually get bored playing on your computer. And I started to write, and my mother helped teach me. And living with her for those 2 years, and my mother was my best friend as well. Um, we, I picked up the writing bug, and there was no way back from that. It's like I loved writing. I still do.
And that's led to a very prolific career as a professional author. You've written 6 books.
Yeah. Yep. Astral Dynamics was my first one. Then I wrote Practical Psychic Self Defense, and then I wrote Mastering Astral Projection. I co-authored that with Brian Mercer, followed up by an audio book with Brian Mercer as well by the same title. A completely different product these are. And then I wrote my book Energy Work. And after this, I was called to revise my first book, Astral Dynamics. A new edition's now available. I've also heavily revised my second book, Practical Psychic Self-Defense, now called the Practical Psychic Self-Defense Handbook, and that's due for release at the end of January, I think. And I've just been asked to revise my book Energy Work. I'll be starting on that shortly, and that'll be released sometime this year, the new edition of it.
That sounds like you have a lot on your plate right now to handle. What, we've just walked through a series of massive events that most people will, most mundane lifestyle people will never experience. I mean, that's a lot to take in. What skills have you taken from that you presently use today? I know that you're very good at auric sight. What else? What else can you do?
I see auras, I have visions, I see spirits, I see into the astral dimension when I'm meditating, particularly. I develop astral sight where I see astral beings. I say I have visions, I see spirits.
So, when you say you have visions, what does that mean? Does that mean you're clairvoyant? You see the future? Elaborate.
Well, sometimes I see the future. Occasionally, like for example, I think I wrote in Astral Dynamics many years ago. I saw the beginning of the Gulf War with Saddam Hussein, the Gulf War One, about 18 months before it actually started. And again, I saw 9/11 with the big aircraft strikes in New York, and I saw that about 2 or 3 years before it happened visually. And things like that. These are spontaneous, high energy events, but on a more mundane level, I see spirits all the time.
When you say you see spirits, are these what we would call dead people? Are these people who have recently deceased?
Sometimes they're recently deceased, sometimes they're not. The afterlife process is tricky. Some people are quite active for a few weeks after they die in the real time zone close to Earth, and they're quite easy to see and interact with. And then people generally fall asleep, and they'll fall asleep and dream for a number of years, processing their life. And once they've done that, they will then be more active in visiting loved ones, and they're more contactable, put it that way.
Now, have you ever had, do these deceased people ever visit you in your home? I mean, what is it like? How intrusive is it? Is it a blessing and a curse to be able to see these people?
It can be. Over the years, originally I was terrified. You see a ghost or something like that, it's like, it's like as a normal reaction. But with familiarity, you get used to this, and I have zero fear of these beings now, even demons. I have great respect for the higher beings, but no fear. I'm just used to dealing with them. And people, for example, if a person's recently deceased, even if I don't know them, if a person dies within a mile of where I am, they will often appear in my living room shortly after they've died, and then I have to convince them that they've died.
Really?
They normally, most people, 99% of people do not know they've died. They don't realise it because, hey, they still feel okay. They still, everything seems to be working. They're just in a confused state. So it helps to convince them that they've died, and give them some advice on how to proceed in the afterlife. Give them some direction. That's a big help to them.
Well, Robert, you've really summed up some really fascinating abilities and stories here. We have plans together to put out a series of video courses over the next year or two. What's on the agenda? Could you give us some details on what kind of courses, what topics we're going to cover in case people listening want to begin, marking their schedule, or, we know some of our friends are already kind of saving up because they really want to get in the door when we make it available. What are we planning on releasing, very soon?
Well, firstly, the reason why we're doing these videos and these courses is because it's a new way of sharing my experience and knowledge widely, and this seems to be an excellent way to do it in great detail. But the courses, we have a 4 DVD set on energy work for self-healing and manifestation, which will be ready for release in the next week or so. Um, and after that, we're planning to create a course on astral projection. And then after that, we're going to do a course on energy work. And after that, we'll probably do a course on psychic self-defense, which I think should be taught in every school classroom should teach this. I mean, very practical things like the power of running water and grounding, earthing, I mean electromagnetic grounding to the planet, and very, very simple things that you can do to help yourself if anything bad does happen. And even if you're a really good person and focus very positively, you can come under attack as a means of testing you. If you plan to spiritually evolve and grow and you really want this, your higher self will test you. And sometimes that testing can be severe. So understanding some of the basics of psychic self-defense is invaluable. And we're also going to do a course which includes, of course, raising Kundalini and how to go about that through energy work and manifestation. And all these things are connected, and all of it relates to connecting with your higher self, which is a higher spiritual aspect of you. It has many names. It can be called the inner demon, the inner daemon, I should say, your higher self. You can call it God. You can call it the higher spirit. Anything you want to call it. It doesn't mind. It is the silent observer within you, the silence between your thoughts. It is the mind which we use to think with. It is
All
a
right,
higher
so
aspect of us.
connecting with the higher self is the result from learning through all these various courses we're going to do. But just to repeat, I want to make sure people get this, in their head or can begin planning, because I know that if I were on the receiving end, I would want to know in advance what you're releasing, because you have so many people that want to know. So first we have self-healing through energy work. That's coming out very shortly, very soon, next few days, really.
Mm-hmm.
And then what? Every 3 to 4 months, we're going to release a new video course. So astral projection, and then energy, body, and kundalini. Getting into the chakras, getting into how to kind of begin developing psychic activity through the chakras. The next one is psychic self-defense, as you've mentioned. So we have a lot for people to look forward to. Now, what is the purpose of this blog, this video blog that we're establishing right now? How frequently are we going to post a conversation? What are we going to do? Or tell us more about this blog.
Well, we're planning on the video blog. We're planning to release a video, say twice a week. That's like a minimum. If we feel inspired, we'll release more. And there's a lot to talk about. You do this in like short 20-minute videos, and each of the bullet points we were talking about before, some of the major events on my life. Go back to each one of those, and I can talk about it for an hour because there's a lot more detail there, obviously, and it's a very important detail to learn. So it'll be fun revisiting those, and it's helping me to pull back some of these amazing experiences I've had in my life. And in that sense, I've been truly blessed. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want this. I didn't plan it. It just happened to me.
Okay, so the plan for the video blog, something that everyone can get excited about, because it's going to be totally free, of course, is really once every 3 days or so, we are going to get into cover the various stories that we relayed earlier in this conversation. So, for example, we may go in depth on the story of your son and your deceased son coming back and visiting you and you finding him. Or in another video entry, we may get into talking about what your experiences were with demons, or, for example, with angels. Okay, so that sounds like a really good idea. Now I think it's important for anyone viewing this that you understand that we need your help. Would you agree, Robert? I mean, we need people to help us get this thing off the ground. We need people to help us spread the word. Um, what are you planning on doing with any feedback that you get from people who leave comments beneath these videos?
Well, we're going to extract from that and the suggestions and the comments people make, asking for questions, things you'd like us to deal with. And we're going to look through these questions and give us ideas for blog episodes. Something that you'd like to hear more about. Let's say you want to hear about animal communication, which is another thing I've learned recently. I've had some amazing experiences with that over the last couple of years. It's a very real thing. And whatever it is, ask your questions and we'll pick out the best of these and we'll do blog episodes on them. So you'll be contributing to the formation of this and helping us to share more widely.
That's really great. So we're going to be very responsive to all the people's concerns and desires and requests for things to cover and learn about. Now, at this point, again, I want to make it clear we need you to share the link to this video blog with all of your spiritually conscious friends. We really want to reach as many people as humanly possible. We want to cultivate a very large community of spiritual seekers and practitioners. We think that there is a lot going on in that area, but there aren't enough communities of very connected practitioners that are actually practicing. And Robert, having you as a kind of guide or leader or teacher in that process could be invaluable. So please contact radio hosts. If you have a blog and you get a lot of people trafficking it, email us at media@astralbob.com and we'll schedule an interview. We really want to help transmit this information to as many human beings as possible. With that, Robert, I think we've really helped make a clear message here that we have a lot of room for growth and plans for expansion. And I just want to thank you for opening up and revealing some of the more personal aspects of your life and your background.
And thank you, Timothy. You've been a real inspiration. This is what we're planning is really exciting. It's a whole new creative level, and I'm just tingling from head to foot. This is lovely.
Great. Well, until the next video blog where we'll go in more depth on your experience with the extraterrestrial in your bedroom, until we see you there, we'll talk soon.
Ciao. See you later.